Just centering down to that space and place that is always calm, always knows what to do, is always grounded, and breathing into that space. I know that there is only one spirit, one intelligence, one mind, one heart that moves through each and every person. It is the macrocosm. We are the microcosm. And I know that I am one with that spirit of abundance, that spirit of right living, that spirit that knows the right thing to do. And I know what is true for me is true for each and every person here. And I know that all the information that we hear this evening will land on open hearts and open minds, and that we will go forward to use it to the best of our ability and just to make the world a better place. And I just leave this and invite you to join me in saying, and so it is.
Yes.
So Ray joined us. Hi, Ray.
I'm good.
And Rich here. Okay.
We are recording, gentlemen. So.
Okay. Good to see everybody here. Okay. Good group.
Good to be seen.
Okay. So I'm going to introduce our presenter facilitator tonight, Michael Richardson, who is the co-founder and organizer of the Rivers and Mountains GreenFaith Circle Buddhist Action Coalition in the Upper Hudson Valley watershed in New York State. He is a retired consultant to municipalities for workforce planning and operating budgets, and he's a committed environmental activist with the Zen Peacemaking Order. In this workshop, Michael will show you how your finances are being used to sustain the fossil fuel industry and how to find alternatives so that your money aligns with your values. So take it away, Michael.
Thank you, Mike and Jean, for hosting this evening. I just put into the chat a website, rivers-mountains-greenfaith.org. That is going to be the website that we use for the workshop. Now I'm going to put it up on a shared screen.
Michael, you're muted.
Aha, I guess you muted everybody and you got me at the same
I
time.
apologize. Yes, I did.
Okay, so I was saying that the website is there and you might want to access that later. And then also I put in my mailing address, riversmountains@iCloud, because if you're like most after the workshop, you're going to have a few questions. And I want you to know that at any time that you can send me one of those questions and I'll get back to you. So let's jump into the workshop. First of all, I like to say that I like small groups, particularly when it's around 6, 7, or 8 people. It's more like sitting around the kitchen table having a conversation. So please treat it like that. We're going to go through this workshop rather systematically, talking about your banking, credit cards, home and auto insurance, and personal investments. But as we go through those and you have questions, just go ahead and come in. So just unmute yourself and ask the question. So allow me to get things going by sharing my screen. This is the homepage from Rivers and Mountains GreenFaith Circle, should you access that at some time. So I want to show you how you can get to the work page. You would click on the divestment budget, button. And you'll see this page, just by mentioning, there's the align your money with your values. That's this workshop. There's also some references here to local campaigns directed at big finance. And this is in conjunction with the GreenFaith campaign for this year that is going to be focusing on some of the large asset managers. And then we also have an additional one here in New York State where we're taking on the teachers' retirement system. Let's go back up here to our workshop and we just click on go to web page. So again, you go to the home page, divestment, go to web page. And here is our worksheet. And you'll see, as I mentioned, that it's broken into 4 parts: personal banking, credit cards, home and auto insurance, and retirement investments. And in each one of these sections, you'll see that there are 3 panels coming from left to right. So let's go up here with the banking, and you'll see how we'll have one panel that says read all about it. The next one has some steps for doing it. And then third, we have this tool that we're going to be using. So to get started, I'd like to ask each of you, I'm going to come off this share for a little bit and ask you just briefly to say what your hopes are and what you might get out of this workshop. Why did you sign up to come into the workshop? And I'm going to pick on people to start. Cindy, you get to start.
I was mostly curious because I have never even considered this before. It's just one of those things that I just never thought of, that the fact that my mortgage is a Bank of America mortgage. From what I've read, that's not a good thing, but I just blind, just ignorance. So I just want to learn more about it so I can make some better choices in where my money goes.
Jeffrey, what do you have to say?
I think for me, it's looking also at making choices in terms of where to invest by knowing where not to invest. I've long had credit unions and that, so I don't really have those kinds of large banking type of accounts or what have you. So I'm curious as to learning where to invest as much as, what to avoid.
Mm-hmm. And I'm only going by the names that I see on the screens here. So I have Tomorrow.
Okay. I can go with both of what Laura and Jeff is saying, that sorry, Cindy, the other one. I just got back from the gym and my shoulders hurt. Let me get my violin out. Hey, my violin. Yes, I'm curious. I want to do to the best of my ability that will benefit the planet and benefit the rest of us and just the planet in general. And I just want to be informed. Yes. This is Chester, by the way.
And what does Chester have to say?
Oh, wow. I've been interested in this for a while, but really didn't know where to go or get the information. I talked to my investment counselor, and in fact, I invited him to be on this Zoom, but I don't see him here. So he's probably already invested in his own, stuff. So yeah, I just want to find out how to do it. And you lightly touched on that right away. It's like the third panel of how to do it, so okay. I'm anxious to see this information.
So Laura, your name came up. You're next.
Well, kind of a combination of what everyone has said. I was completely unaware that, those oil companies and so forth were using my money. to do with as they please. And that kind of doesn't sit that well. And I'm right at the a point in my point in time here that I am making some changes with my investments and so forth. So I'm really interested to find out where's a good place for my investments to be. And as Rev Jeff said, a good place for them not to be. And so I'm excited to get all this stuff.
Ray, do you have something to say on this? Oh,
Helps to be unmuted. I was aware from other campaigns and all about the banking, but I hadn't really then considered like insurance companies. So to me, I think knowledge is power. I know that we can vote with our dollar, whether it's companies as well, large companies, and what they're doing in parts of the world and how they're acting and towards the environment. I'm just really here for the information, and I really appreciate that you're putting this on. Thank you.
my pleasure. Edward.
I concur with what everyone else has said. Basically I was kind of ignorant to the extent to which the fossil fuel industry is involved in or steeped in the overall financial industry as well. And so finding that out was a real eye opener. So I just want to be able to get the information to be able to make informed choices moving forward as far as, who I bank and invest and get my insurance from as well.
Karen.
Hi. So it's actually something I've been aware of for a very long time, but I've never really made the time to actually really delve into it. So when I saw this class, I was like, oh, this is perfect. Because for me, a lot of like the 401k where they bucket things and put them into all these kind of like different funds that you invest in. Right. I'm sure there's tons of hidden things that I would not put my money in if I was actually aware. So for me, it's increasing awareness and really being aware of where my money is and what it's invested in, because I don't want it to be in arms. I don't want it to be in the oil industry and things that are just harmful.
And Brighton.
Hello. I don't think I'm going to add anything new to after what everyone else has said, but I am definitely in consensus, wanting to be able to make more educated decisions. It is like something I'm trying to move into with my career is in sustainability. So I feel like all the knowledge I can get is really going to help.
And back to our host there.
So yes, when this came up at the GreenFaith webinar, when you spoke very briefly, it really, again, it was quite an eye opener, and it really piqued our interest and got us thinking. And so this is obviously the follow up to that, because I know you had a whole lot more to share. So here we are.
Yeah, and as Jeff said, we've been with a credit union for years, so we don't have that issue, but I know that we probably have investments and we certainly have credit cards that may be supporting fossil fuel industry, which, if we have our druthers, we won't be supporting that. So we're really intrigued, as Mike said, by what we saw at the GreenFaith webinar and looking forward to getting more information on that.
Well, let's jump into it then. All of us share something in common, that we are interested in aligning our money with our values. And when we go out there to do the research on all this, what we end up finding is it's overwhelming. There's just so much. And when we started doing the research to put this workshop together, at first, we started noticing that one report was repeating itself in another report, People were borrowing something. You'd read something, and then you read it again and read it again. And some of it wouldn't necessarily seem quite right, and we do some more research. And I hate to say that after a while, we started finding not that some, but most of what we were reading had some inaccuracies, and in some cases was just plain wrong. So we kept digging deeper and deeper and deeper. And it became very obvious that we needed to put together something that anyone could go to and rely on. They could get their information in a digestible way. And hopefully that's what you'll find from this workshop. As I showed you in the overlay, we put it into 4 parts. So we're going to look at your deposits that you have in the bank. We're going to look at your spending dollars that pass through your credit card. We're going to look at the premiums that you put into the insurance plans. And we're going to look at your investments that you have for your retirement. And as we look at all those different flows, we're going to simply look at exactly where is the harm coming from, get an understanding of how we can move away from that harm, and then give us the information on what steps to take to do so. Now, we shared a lot of our values as we were going around each person, but I want to just draw to attention that the goal of the workshop, the purpose of the workshop, is to build awareness to what's happening with your deposits, your dollars, your investments. It's not to tell you what your values are. So sometimes you'll hear me say something. Let's start off with the credit union. I'm going to be saying something like, to me and my values, I want to get as local as I possibly can. I want to get as small as I possibly can. Eat local, shop local. You know the story. And so that's a value that I have. For someone else, their value might be that they just don't want to be putting their money into fossil. And it might be not necessarily so much about the environment, some, but it might be more that it's just not necessarily a secure investment anymore. It's such a volatile investment. So let's start the exercise. And again, ask questions as they come up. We're going to start with banking. And the reason we start with banking is that this is something that you have control over. You don't need a third party to deal with it. So right here, it starts off in the banner. If you bank with one of these Wall Street banks, there's a very good chance that your deposits are not being used in a way that align with your values. And if you want to have some arguing points or some discussion points for the next time you're having dinner with your family, you can go to Green America here and read all about it. They have a very thorough report on what's going on with the big banks and how they're using your deposits. I would think that most of us in our lives have moved from one bank to another or from a bank to a credit union. Maybe not, or maybe we just forgot. But here under Stop the Money Pipeline, you can see that there are steps for moving your money. Then we get into this wonderful tool called Mighty Deposits. So under Mighty Deposits, which was put together by a group of investment bankers, and this is a well-organized, well-staffed organization that is constantly updating their material. So we're going to click on Use This Tool. Now, we're going to start with a credit union because Gene and Mike said that they are using a credit union. So you'll see here on this very simple page, there's Find Banks and Find Credit Unions. So let's click on the credit union. And you see this other tool comes up here. I want a credit union located that uses my money to support. And there's these drop-down windows where you can look at different types of things that the credit union might support with the investments. But let's instead use just to look up the credit union by name. So Gene, what's the name of your credit union? Are you there? Gene? I'm not hearing from you. Are you there? Are you
There we go. Okay, here we
okay, let me go back
are.
to,
Printing Industries Credit Union.
okay, let me go back to share. Say that for me again.
Printing Industries Credit Union.
See how it popped up right away? So this first window that you'll see, and we're going to do a bank also, but the first window that you see here looks very much the same as you would for banks. It says 62 of the $100 is going into community investments. It's 7% above average. Now, this is an average that is for credit unions. Credit unions are going to have a higher norm average than you would find, say, with the bank because of their very nature. 100% is going into California, which is simply because it's based in California. And you can see here that they have a focus on low-income communities and or communities of color. Now, we're going to look at some other examples that have more of these characteristics than just these two. You can click on See More Details, and it will tell you how the community investments are being dispersed. So much of it is going into households. The remaining 38% is used for something else that could be investments in other branches, securities, derivatives, or financing not directly to community use. Now, any credit union or bank should have somewhere between 20 and 40% in this category, because this is where they are making certain that the money is secure as a risk against the loans they might be making. So you don't want to see that they're loaning out 100% of the money. They're holding some back in investments. And you'll see that there's a few other things you can click on here or there to find out about this credit union. So let's back away from that. Does somebody want to give me a bank that they might be using?
How about C3 Bank? That's where our church accounts are.
Okay, so we're back here. We're going to click on Find Banks. And it's the C.
Letter C and then the number 3. Bank.
There it is, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, now the characteristics that we see in this one is, it's interesting because it's $68 for every 100. And you'll see how that's 78% above industry average. And again, that's a little bit higher above industry average because the industry average is lower than you'd find in a credit union. But again, as a community bank, which this is, you would expect it to be investing heavily in the community. It says here that it has above average in small business lending. It's above average in housing lending. And again, we can go and click on more data. And you'll see where the money is going to. Now, in a contrast, let's just go look at a Wall Street bank. Excuse me.
I bank with US Bank.
All right, let's use that. That's a good one to look at. I think this is the one we want, if I'm right. Maybe not. Sorry about this. That doesn't seem right for them. But that's the choices they're getting us. So maybe it is in Cincinnati. So you can see that $47 is being invested in the communities. They're in 27 states. So this is US Bank. You can see where their spread is. I thought US Bank would be showing us that they have some investments in oil. But let's go over and look at one that does have investments in oil. Now, see, we're here down here. This is what I was looking for when we were looking at US Bank. Top funder of fossil fuels. On all those others, you didn't see a warning like that. Here you see that, and you'll see these on the Wall Street banks. And you can see here that 37 is being invested in the community. Very, very low. And on this one, it's going to show us more of where the dollars are going. 63% is being used to fund outside the community. So let's take a pause here for a moment from this and talk a little bit. The reason we start with banks is that it's easy enough to say that if you're with a Wall Street bank, you're probably not going to find an alignment. And the solution is rather simple. You go to a community bank or a credit union. Now, those two institutions, even though they may be quite large, some community banks like Beneficial State Bank, for example, is quite large. It's in 3 different states, Washington, Oregon, and California, but it is still a community bank. And by their very charter, they don't invest outside of the community. And of course, you understand that's the same with the credit union. And so they may not necessarily have all the values that you share, but they're not at least investing in fossil fuels. And it's very likely they're not investing in tobacco, guns, and prisons. It's not what they do. So their next one would be, well, what other values are important to me? And so those other values may be, well, I want to have a really small credit union that's investing in my very close neighborhood, or a small community bank that's investing in my close neighborhood. I don't want to have a big regional community bank where my deposits are being used to fund or finance businesses and farms that are far, far away from me. So that would be another value you want to look at. But then let's go back to our source here. Click. And let's go back to on Find Banks. Let's look at a model bank. Down here at the bottom of the page, let's look at eco-friendly banks, okay? And let's just simply browse on banks that are not financing fossil fuels. So this would be for
I'm not
some-
seeing your page. Is everybody else seeing his page? Okay, we're not seeing your page, Michael.
Uh-oh. Let me get back to why it's not sharing. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
we're good.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so we went back to where we were, Find Banks. Now let's say that who had US Bank, and you just say, I don't want to be with US Bank anymore. And so you would go in and you'd start looking around. And one way to go looking around is just to go to Find Banks and click down here to eco-friendly banks. And I'm looking for a bank that's not financing fossil fuels. Now, what's interesting here is you see there are 13 banks in the US that match my search. 13 banks. Wait a minute.
Yeah, it's not much.
Let's look at where they're at. Here's Ponce, New York.
In New York.
Carver, New York. National Cooperative, Ohio. Spring Bank, which is a wonderful bank. It's in New York. Beneficial State Bank, I mentioned them earlier. Carver, Georgia. This one in Taos, New Mexico. Berkshire Bank, which is in Massachusetts. This is a bank I'm going to talk about a little bit more later. And you'll see these others as we go down the line. But let's go just for an example back up here to Beneficial State Bank, because you're going to hear me talk about Beneficial State Bank, Berkshire Bank, and also the First National Bank of Omaha quite a bit. And you'll see all these other buttons that are here. Now, remember the others, they only had 1 or 2. And so this is what I mean. We go looking for some other things that are important to us. Now, for me, small is important, but also I want to see that it's investing in low-income communities. I think that was one that we saw on the credit union that we looked at. that they're above average in small business lending. I want to see that. They're above average in housing lending. So this bank starts to look very, very attractive to me as being something that is aligning with my values. I'm going to ask you, when you have more time, note down to go do some Google research on what is B Corp. This is a brand that is very, very important in the environmental movement. We look for companies that are certified B Corp.
And
You remember I said earlier when we were doing our research that we often were suspicious that what we were reading was maybe not correct, wasn't giving us all the story, might even be wrong. Well, two things we rely on. One is that Mighty Deposits is very well vetted and they're very careful about the research. So if somebody says, I saw it on Mighty Deposits, I would say that that's probably pretty good. But also if you say the company is B Corp certified, that's also a good indicator that they're meeting the test. There's another certification that we look at when we get into investments and with credit cards, and that's Green America. So if you're certified by Green America, you're certified by B Corp, you can feel fairly comfortable that you're dealing with a good actor. So, questions, comments, what to do? Yes, Laura.
If you have one of those banks, so there are, you choose one of those, and it's obviously not local to us, how difficult is that? Or do we stay focused on one that's in our community? I think I just answered my own question.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think a lot of people just go to a credit union. And we know what credit unions are. It's owned by the depositors. They're all about the community. You can do your search on whether or not the community, that credit union is more focused on certain things that align with your values or not. But I think you find yourself feeling fairly comfortable being with a credit union. Some of these community banks, like Beneficial State Bank, you may not have one in your neighborhood. Many people these days do not ever go to a brick and mortar bank. It's all done online anyhow. But I would highly recommend looking at Beneficial State Bank. Now myself, I use a community bank in my neighborhood because I'm trying to support that bank. It's the last standing truly community bank. It's called the Bank of Greene County. And if I didn't use them, I would probably use a credit union.
so, Michael, I noticed that on the list of banks that you had there, one of them was Spring Bank, and it
Yes.
said 78% of its money was spent locally, I think it was.
Yeah.
Anyway, it had a very, why did you not recommend that one particularly?
Well, I would if you were down around New York City. And also when we start talking about investments, for people that have not so much money to invest, basically, if you don't have $100,000 to invest, you're probably not going to use a financial advisor. And so if you have less than $100,000 to invest, you're often looking for other types of investment tools. And Spring Bank is a bank to look at for taking out community investments and the like. They're very highly regarded. But again, I think that most people on the West Coast would be say, wait a minute, it's a New York City bank. In fact, we're 150 miles upriver from the city. And a lot of people say, well, that's the New York City bank. I don't want to do banking with it. But really, Spring Bank is a bank to be admired.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
If I if I do want to do investing, and I guess that I am using I bank with USAA, and they have Charles Schwab partnered with them. If I wanted to is there a right verbiage to use to say I want to invest sustainably, or I want to invest I want my money to go into sustainable causes?
Yes, yes. And when we get to that part on investments, part 4, we're going to be specifically directly that. I'm going to show you this beautiful tool where you can actually go look and find some green funds that are under Schwab.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, what we're going to do next is move over into credit cards. And credit cards are much like the banks. That we're going to be looking at the large banks that issue credit cards and then the alternatives. And this is also something that, like the banks, you can do yourself. So as we go back into our screen here and scroll down, credit cards, number 2. So as it says here, if you have a credit card that is issued by one of these Wall Street banks.
We're not seeing it again, Michael.
No.
Sorry.
You know what I do is I click away without doing the shared screen first. Now you can see it, yes?
Yes.
Okay. So credit cards. If you have cards that are issued by one of these Wall Street banks, it's the same story. But instead of having deposits, what's going on here is that you have your spending money that is passing through them. Many of you may be aware that when you use your credit card, there's usually a 3% service charge that is borne actually by the vendor. So if you go to a restaurant and you use your card, that vendor is going to have to pay 3%. Now, in reality, jack their prices up by 3% to cover it, but still it's being paid by them. And what happens to that 3%? If I go in and I have a $100 bill, there's $3 sitting there, right? What happens to that $3? So let's look at what happens with your cards. Let me just take you through these 3 panels. To find a responsible credit card, again, we have you go to Green America and read all about it. These other 2 panels, though, are going to be focusing on the theme of who brands the card and issues the card. So again, let me point out those words: branding and issuing. We could also use the word sponsoring or issuing. Now, in this example, we have this Evergreen card by First National Bank of Omaha. We also have the climate card that's issued by Beneficial State Bank. They are branding and issuing their own cards. So this bank is branding and issuing a card. This bank is branding and issuing a card. Let's go down here and just look at Amalgamated Bank. This bank is branding a card, but they don't issue it. Instead, they actually go to First National Bank of Omaha, who issues the card. Now, what most of us are familiar with would be a card from Citibank or Chase Bank or one of those Wall Street banks. So Citibank brands and issues their own card. Chase also brands and issues their own card. Now, I'm going to come off the share for a little bit. And I'm going to show you one of my old cards. And this old card right here, you see, is an American Airlines card. And down here in the corner, it says Citi. So who's branding it? American Airlines. Who's issuing it? Citi. Now remember, this whole thing about MasterCard and Visa, that doesn't mean anything. That's just the processing that goes back and forth. And sometimes you'll see things that say plus and other things on the back. That's just for your ATM. So what we're interested in is who's the bank that's issuing the card. So anybody got their credit card handy? This is where I ask.
Which one would you like?
This is where I ask for your credit card number and your social security number and your banking running number, right?
It won't take you too far. Do you want a credit card?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you see who is branding it?
It's US Bank.
Okay, so that's a bank that's branding it, and then who's issuing it?
Yeah, it's their own card.
And so it says
Yeah,
US Bank on the back,
Yeah.
or does it say Elon?
No, it says US Bank on the front.
Yep.
And it may say something down there at the bottom, but I can't read it.
Yeah,
I
it
have-
probably says Elon. Elon is the bank that actually issues it, but what's interesting, it's wholly owned by US Bank.
Ah,
So if you see Elon on the back of your card, that's a US Bank card.
hmm,
Anybody else want to
okay.
jump in? What do you, so you have a credit union card. Now on the back of your card, good one. On the back of your card, do you see CUNA? No?
A lot of fine print here.
Yeah.
No, actually,
Okay, so I'm going to speak to that. You have a situation where your credit union is issuing its own card, and that's probably one of the better places you want to be. So who owns the credit union? You do. Who's issuing the card? You are. Nice place to be. Okay, let's go back to the screen here for a minute then. And
Okay,
I'll try.
wait, can hold on just 1 second.
Yes, Cindy.
So you're saying like one of my credit cards is a Bank of America credit card, but it says Visa on it.
Yeah, so don't
Visa
worry about
has
the-
nothing to do with it.
No. The Visa is just the system that is being used to move the money back and forth between banks.
Okay.
So Visa's not out there investing your money. MasterCard's not out there investing your money. That's just a money system. What we're interested in is what is the bank that's issuing the card, because it's the bank that's issuing the card that gets the 3%. Now, what do they do with the 3%? Now, some of us have travel miles, right? Now, every one of those miles is worth about 1%. And actually with American, it's just a little bit under 1%. What happens to the other 2%? Yeah, city gets it.
Hmm.
What does city do with my 2%? It's their money. And so some of us might have a cash back card. And so if you have a cash back card, some of those cash back cards might be giving you 5% on this, 1% on that. But in the whole wash of things that comes together, it usually works out to be about 1.5% that goes to the consumer and 1.5% that goes back to the bank. So that's why we're concerned about who is the issuing bank. And so we go back over to Mike and Jean. It's their credit union that's doing it. Now, are they giving you rewards, or are they giving you cash back? What are they? So they're taking that money and putting it back into the credit union, which they're probably using it to help with loans and everything, because again, it's still your money. It's just now everybody's money. Okay, let's go back and I'll see if I can hit the shared screen first time this time. There we go. Let's quickly talk just about a couple of other things. There's what's called an affinity card. Now, the affinity card is like that American airline card that I just showed you. So American Airlines brands it, but in that case, Citi was issuing it. Many people are very interested in getting this card from Green America. In fact, if you go over here and read all about it from Green America, they're going to be suggesting that you take their card. And many people consider that to be a good thing to do, because out of that 3%, they get roughly 0.5% back that they use to support their environmental campaigns. The other 2.5% are used to give you some rewards, and 1 percentage point goes to TCM. So you see here 2 examples. Green America credit card issued by TCM. Now Sierra Club, we like Sierra Club, is issued by Beneficial State Bank. So let's go back up here and look. On the back of the card, you remember I asked Jean and Mike if they could find CUNA. The Credit Union National Association, this is the credit union that issues credit cards for credit unions. If you don't see CUNA it means they're issuing their own card. That credit union is. Now, with community banks, we see usually TCM. This is a bank that exists for the purposes of issuing credit cards to community banks. They also issue credit cards for certain organizations like Green America. Others that you might see are First National Bank of Omaha, and remember Beneficial State Bank? In fact, later this year, Green America is no longer going to be using TCM. They're going back to using Beneficial. So on the back of your card, you want to see one of four things. If it's a credit union, you want to see CUNA. If it's a bank, you want to see one of these three, or you want to see nothing. Nothing means they're issuing their own card. Now, just quickly in closing out this whole section, we have what's called store cards. Store cards, many of us have from phone companies, sand clubs, hardware stores, whatever, and some Amazon cards. 2 Amazon cards are issued by Citi. The rest of them are issued by either these 2 companies, Synchrony or Community. Neither of these are investing in fossil fuels. So if you have a Sam's Club card that's issued by Community, then you're not investing in fossil fuels. These 2 banks only exist for the purposes of issuing credit cards for these companies. They get their money by keeping 1-2 percentage points and return that to their investors. Moving off this just for a moment, you notice that I didn't say anything at all about American Express or Diners Club. American Express and Diners Club, neither one are investing in fossil fuels. It's not what they do. Now, again, other values, and I'm going to give you my values. That's cool that American Express doesn't do that. I really don't care to do business with American Express. There's other reasons I don't like them. But if you have an American Express card or a Diners Club card, they're not investing in fossil fuels. They're like Community and Synchrony, that they make their money by getting the service charge and investing their money in different ways.
So can I just check that I heard right? You said Synchrony and Comenity don't invest in fossil fuels.
Correct.
Thank you.
Now, sometimes I'm asked for a recommendation. And let me just go back to what I would recommend. I'm going to pick on my 45-year-old daughter. She got rid of her Citi card, and she now has this Evergreen card by First National Bank of Omaha. So this is branded and issued by First National Bank of Omaha. They have a 2% cash back. It's the only green card that does 2% cash back. The other 2% cash back cards are issued by Citi and Chase. One of them's the Sapphire card. Beneficial State Bank is at 1.5%. They also have a rewards program instead of cash back. So many people that want to have a credit card will be looking very closely at Evergreen or Beneficial, which are branded and issued by the same, or they're over here looking at Green America or Beneficial or Sierra Club or something like that, where part of that 3% goes to support these good organizations. Any questions?
Yes. How complete is your list of like credit unions? Is there a possibility that I could look up my credit union? It's too small, or it wouldn't be there?
It's probably there.
Okay.
What is your credit union?
It's called Altura, Altura.
Yeah, at the end, I don't have a stop time here. We can keep on going. So at the end, let's go back and take a look, okay?
Thank you.
Yeah. So banks, credit cards. we all kind of knew that something was going on there, right? We just didn't trust those Wall Street banks. We just didn't trust those big credit cards, Citi, Chase, and all that kind of stuff. But auto and home insurance, never thought of it. And we're surprised when we find out that Liberty Mutual actually invests more money in fossil fuel than most of the Wall Street banks. Now, you thought you were getting auto and home insurance from an auto and home insurance company, didn't you? I did. But actually, I was getting my insurance from a fossil fuel insurance company. That all of the major insurance companies, all the major commercial insurance companies are investing and insuring fossil fuel. Now, the investing aspect of it is they hold all these premium dollars from your car insurance and your home insurance premiums. This is billions of dollars. What do you think they do with it? They don't just put it in a bank account to pay out risk. They invest it and pay out the risk. And so if they have $1 billion in investing and it's growing, then they have more than the $1 billion that you paid in premiums. They are disproportionately investing that money in the extraction and the production and the distribution of fossil fuels. Some of them, as I mentioned, more than what you would find with a Wall Street bank. And also what they're doing is they're insuring these industries. Now think about it. This is what they're in. They're in the insurance business. And just imagine what the premiums are on an oil rig or a tanker or a pipeline. Mention the BP rig that sprung the leak, the Exxon Valdez, you know the stories. The risk out there, the billions and billions of dollars of risk out there. And so with that comes high premiums, and with high premiums come high profits. It's a great business to be in. They're all doing quite well. So let's take a little look at them a little bit more. And we'll go back to our sheet, our worksheet. Here we come. Home and auto insurance. Now, if you want to read about this as far as what the insurance companies are doing in the terms of investing and insuring, read all about it. We find one of the best sources is the Rainforest Action Network on this link. There's additional reading that you'll find on this button, and there's no more definitive authority out there than Insure Our Future. In the same way that we trust up here, Mighty Deposits, we recommend that you look at Insure Our Future. Now, they don't have a handy little tool like Mighty Deposits, but they will give you quite a bit of information on insurance companies. So to get into this quickly, if you look at these commercial insurers, you're familiar with a lot of these on this list. Right down here with USAA, Geico, Liberty Mutual, Progressive, State Farm, all of them. And what you'll find by reading about them over here in Rainforest Action Network or Insure Our Future is the level in which they're insuring and investing in fossil fuels. So what to do? The solution here is for you to look to local, regional insurance companies, usually mutuals, a few privately held. Now, the word mutual means the same thing as credit union means in banking. So a credit union is owned by the people that have the deposits. A mutual is owned by the people that are making the premium payments. It works the same way. So they'll have a board of directors with the president and the like. So we like to look at mutuals. Now, don't be confused here because there's Liberty Mutual, which is, as we pointed out, the largest as far as all of the insurance companies and larger than many of the Wall Street banks in investing in fossil fuels. Now, you see here that these are just New York ones that I have. So you're going to have to look inside your own state to find where you might find a small mutual or cooperative in which to get your insurance. There are a few nationals that we can talk about, but we'll wait a minute to get there. Now, the way we go about finding another insurance company is we have to do the old-fashioned way. That let's just pick who owns Utica National. See how I type that in? It's the old-fashioned way of going in and just finding out whether or not the company is owned by one of the larger insurance companies. And you can go in there and, quite candidly, you even look to see what the Wikipedia has to say about it. I want to work on some of your own insurance companies. Can somebody mention where you have your home or auto insurance?
Geico.
Okay. Does anybody have one that's not a large commercial?
I don't know. I have Safeco. Is that a large commercial one?
Well, it is, but that's a good one for you to point out. Let's use it.
Okay.
So again, we don't have this mighty deposits tool to look at, and it's not on the list. So who owns Safeco? See?
Mm-hmm.
And as we do that, we see that, look at this, Liberty Mutual owns them.
Hmm.
Safeco Insurance, a member of Liberty Mutual Group. So that is something that would make our eyebrows go up.
Yeah.
What about Speedy Insurance Agency?
Now, you gave the name of an agency. What is the insurance policy? Who are they writing?
Don't turn on my camera. It's just this ad I keep getting all the time. I had Geico. I was thinking about changing to this one. So I don't really know how it's just a Speedy Insurance Agency, the best rate guaranteed.
Yeah, they're an agency, so they're going to write a policy with somebody else.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll talk about agents in here in a minute. Does anybody else have somebody to put out there?
Yeah. If in California we have AAA. I was about to look it up. So.
I have to go a little bit different than this. Let's see how this up.
Wallet.
See,
It's not owned by a parent company or by shareholders.
Yeah. See, so you're following the type of research that we're looking for. First of all, Safeco gave us a good example because we immediately found out that they're owned by Liberty Mutual. We go, oh shucks. But now we say no one owns AAA. That's interesting. It's not owned by a parent company or a shareholder. Well, that's good. Now, what are they doing with all that money? Let's go find out if they're any good. And you can keep on digging. Now, sometimes you can do something as simple as this. Does AAA invest in fossil fuel? Ooh, AAA gets a triple F on climate policy.
Oh.
Well, let's go read about this a little bit more. Why are they getting a triple F? So we want to read a little bit more about what's going on there.
Mm-hmm.
You'll see some of these companies, some of these sites are showing up here. If you click on which insurance companies invest in fossil fuels, who's writing this article? Insurance Business Mag.
Oh.
But AAA is not going to be in the top 10. Allianz, which actually is starting to do things right. They're a European company, German company, as you know. In fact, all four of these that you're looking at right here are European.
Oh.
Anybody else want to pick one before we jump around too much?
How about State Farm?
That's a good one to talk about. State Farm is owned by State Farm, so we'll go back and talk about them and Geico in just a minute. Anybody else want to throw one out there while we're? Okay.
We have Allstate.
Yeah, okay. So let's go back to our homepage. Sorry. Should have gone back here like there. Okay. On this list here, Allstate, which at one time was started up by Sears, is now just Allstate. Geico, which is owned by Berkshire Hathaway, also known as Warren Buffett. People brought up State Farm, which is a brick and mortar. All of those, if you go read about them and Insure Our Future, you're probably going to have the same feeling you have about a Wall Street bank. You're going to find that they are heavy investors and insurers in fossil fuel. And so you're going to want to be looking for an alternative.
But the small companies, Michael, I know with the big companies here, they like Allstate's been around for eons. What if I choose a little mutual something or other company? Do I have a more or less a guarantee that it's going to be around in a few years?
Well, that's where you want to do your research. And here's where we're going to come in. That for most of us, if we want to look for an alternative, we have to go to a third party. Now, let's go back. When we were talking about banks and credit cards, we could take care of that ourselves. We didn't need somebody else. But when it comes to this, I can't find most of these small mutuals by going online 15 minutes or less. And also, I have a lot of questions. I've never heard of you. Who are you? How long have you been around? What are you doing with my money? So these are questions that you need to ask, and you have a hard time getting the answers. You can dig around on the internet, which we've done. And oh, by the way, after this workshop, if you want to give me a call or an email or two as we're looking around, I'm glad to help you to be a sounding board. But we try to go to these third-party independent agents. Now, we had a problem right in the very beginning as we started this. We would go to an independent agent saying, listen, I no longer want to be with Travelers. Travelers is number 5 in investing and insuring in fossil fuels. I want to get off of them, and I want to go with somebody who's not doing that. And it can't be anybody on this list. And one insurance agent would look at you and say, what? What are you talking about? But we started finding other insurance agents that understood what we were talking about and were like as equally interested as we were, wanting to know more, or maybe they knew a little bit more. And we started working with them. So we've been identifying them up here in the Northeast. Hopefully, as this project from GreenFaith moves on, we'll be able to identify more and more as we go into different states. But I would suggest that you find yourself an independent insurance agent that writes these small mutuals and cooperatives. And then the first thing that you want to ask them is, I want you to shop my plan, apples for apples. I want the exact same coverage that I have with Allstate. I want the exact same coverage I have with State Farm. After they've shopped you apples to apples, then you ask them the second question. Am I correctly insured? Am I overinsured or am I underinsured? But the reason you want to get the apples to apples quote first, because now you have a benchmark to compare with, right? Now, what we found, I'm going to tell you my own family story. My life partner, Joanne, she insures the house and a car. She had Allstate. She moved over to a small mutual based in New York State. I had insurance on my car and also an umbrella insurance. And I had that with Travelers. And I went over to a different regional small mutual. I saved 30%. Joanne saved 26% on her premiums. I ended up saving $500. She ended up saving $700 yearly, apples to apples. Now, it's always volatile. one year you're going to save a lot. Maybe the next year the rates go back up. Comparatively speaking, they go back down. It's always back and forth. Insurance agents don't like to shop your plans yearly, but I suggest that you shop your plans every 3 or 4 years, just so you know that you're getting the right insurance for your money. So anyhow, back to where we're at. I want to make one definite comment about these small mutuals and cooperatives. It's kind of like the small banks. It's not in their business to invest in fossil fuels or tobacco or firearms or prisons. Not to be flippant about it, they're too small to be dirty. Imagine the amount of money that you have to have on hand to go insure a pipeline or an oil well or a tanker. They just don't have that kind of money to go out and be in that kind of business. So instead, they're insuring a small business, a small construction company, a small farm. That's what they're out doing. So they may not be sharing your values from the heart, but at least they're sharing your values in practice.
Michael, I have a question. This is Jeannie. My dad, most of my life, was a banker, and when I needed to take over his finances, I moved him to a credit union. He still, you know, knew what was what, and he was like, I don't know that I want to go to a credit union. And I said, Dad, it's insured, just a different insuring company for the credit union, but just, you know, $100,000 per deposit, blah, blah, blah. So I'm wondering if insurance, and it kind of speaks to Cindy's question, you know, are they all going to be the same as far as, you know, if I whether I'm at Altura or I'm at a printing employee or printing industries, my accounts are covered the same. If I switch insurance companies, even, you know, especially I guess if I go with a small one, can I get the same service? Can I get the same guarantees of coverage? Is that part of apples to apples?
Yes. So as far as the service, I think you're going to find you're going to get better service. And when it comes to coverage, that's what you're buying. So that's where you want to make certain that you're getting an apples for apples quote. In fact, Geico is one of the most mysterious ones I'm trying to figure out. They use a whole different type of reporting. You look at your Geico and you go to shop it, apples to apples, you can't even find the apples. It's very complicated. So, but the question you want to look at is most of these mutuals and cooperatives have actually been around for 100 and some years. They've been around longer than these other companies. And, but you want to ask the question of how well do they pay on their claims? And just like going into Amazon and seeing if everybody, what's the reviews say? The reviews are out there. And you're going to see some ones and you're going to see some fives. Read about the ones and read about the fives. You're always going to find a one, right? The best thing in the world is going to have somebody that says this was horrible. But read the reviews. And also, if you're using an independent insurance agent, they're going to know because they've been processing these. So when I was out shopping, my agent said, well, you know, we used to have problems with this company, but they got their act together. We haven't had any problems in 6 or 7 years. But then I would read somebody's report and say, well, they had a horrible, where they were denied this, that, and the other. And then you do your research and you find out that actually they were filing a claim that wasn't necessarily correct. Right. So you got to do your research. You do. But I think what you're going to find is that these small mutuals have been around for a very long time. You're going to have good reviews and you're going to have good service. But what we're trying to do here, and this is really where we're kind of phasing through this awareness, the banks, the credit cards, and again, when we got to the insurance companies, it was real easy to identify the bad actors, but the solution gets to be complicated. It's not as easy as just going to a credit card that has TCM stamped on the back of it, or a credit card that has nothing stamped on the back of it. So I know it came from my community bank or my credit union, right? You know, back on the credit card thing, if you're ever wondering, like you don't see anything there, just ask, who issues your credit card? Oh, we issue it ourselves. Just ask. So on the insurance companies, any other questions? Oh, and just go back on this. If you're out there doing some research, just send me an email saying, what do you know about Acme Insurance Company of Southern California? And I'm glad to help take a look at it with you. I truly have fun doing this, so please.
I've got a question that kind of builds off of both Cindy's and Jeannie's. So I like the comment that you mentioned about, how much they pay out and kind of the ratio of payouts. But if I'm thinking on a bigger scale, like if something catastrophic happens on a large scale and I'm with a very small company, then, it's fine paying your insurance premiums, right? But if something, heaven forbid, happens, and it happens to a lot of people, and a lot of people that are with that insurance company, so I guess I've got two questions. Like we've got FDIC insurance for banks. Is there any insurance for insurance companies that are guaranteed some sort of payout? And my other question, again, kind of leading to that or linking to that, is there any sort of magic ratio that we should be looking at for like company assets to risk, like insurance risk policies they've written?
Yes to all that. And that's why, again, with the independent insurance agent, you're going to be able to ask those questions and get those answers specifically. But just all of them, particularly in California, have backup insurance. So the insurance company is insured.
Okay.
Now, sometimes we're not happy with where they go get their insurance. So you may have this wonderful looking little mutual and you say, where do you have your backup insurance? And they go, oh, Allianz, or oh, Zurich, or oh, Lloyd's. I'm going to use Cincinnati, for example. Cincinnati is you'll see Cincinnati's on the list of ones that invest in fossil fuel, but we could often say that they're the cleanest shirt in the hamper. That if you had a choice of all these, which one would you take? Well, Hanover or Cincinnati might be okay. Or even not State Farm, but Farmers might be okay. The cleanest shirt in the hamper. But when you go to look at who is their backup insurance, like Cincinnati, it's Lloyd's. And Lloyd's is a heavy investor in coal in Germany. But I digressed on that one. They have backup insurance. So they're not going to, I can imagine, particularly in Southern California or even Northern California, the earthquake or the fire or something like that, where it wipes out a whole lot of their policies and then they don't have the ability to pay. So that's a concern that you want to ask your insurance agent. Last week, we had one with the GreenFaith Circle in Boulder. And as we were asking the question, there was a fire burning up in the hills. And so people were concerned. Okay, let's jump into the final one. And I'm going to go back to shared screen. So I'm getting good at this. I hit all the buttons right. So on the finances, we're looking more here at asset managers, and we're also looking a bit at financial advisors. But it's the asset managers that concern us the most because they behave like the Wall Street banks. So rather than having a lecture on this, if you want to find out about these asset managers, we recommend that you go to Stop the Money Pipeline and just go through their FAQs, their frequently asked questions, read all about it. You'll notice here there's Vanguard, BlackRock, State Street, Capital Group. By the way, GreenFaith is taking on as their focus this year, the assets managers of BlackRock and Vanguard. That's part of the whole climate finance campaign. Green America has some good tools that we're going to jump back on steps to divest and reinvest. And also we're going to go back and look at this tool here as we go to look for some financial advisors. So we're going to come back to find fossil free investments. That'll be our last one. But over here, we have this wonderful tool, As You Sow. This tool, like Mighty Deposits, was put together by people who are looking to have complete information on what's happening with your investments. It's put together by the professionals. The investment finance advisors use this tool. So let's go look at what it says. Search tool, funds and ETFs. So as soon as you click on that button, you're going to get this page from Fossil Free Funds. The organization is As You Sow. They've been doing this for 30 years. And you get this, are your savings invested in fossil fuels? There's other tabs over here, by the way. Let me just show this, where you can go and look at other funds as far as weapons, tobacco, prisons, and the like. Here, you see it? If you really want to dig down deep on Vanguard, BlackRock, and the like, here. I highly recommend when you get into this to go to the video tutorials. One in particular is just their introduction tutorial. Very worthwhile. If we had more time, we would actually play it. Let's go back. So we're into searching for, in this case, fossil fuels. Remember, this menu button's up here for you. So I'm going to just pick on one here called Jackson National. And I'm just going to click on Jackson National itself, none of its indexes. You get this annoying little bar here, click on it. And let's just take a peek at what this tool does for us. Now, again, we're looking on fossil fuels here, Jackson National. And we see here this menu where it says fossil fuel grade, sustainability mandate, the percent of the fund that is invested in fossil fuels, this wonderful little tool that we'll talk about or read about later called carbon footprint. You want to see a small number and a green button. Clean 200. This is the amount of money that they're actually investing in clean energy. This is the size of the fund, and this is some other information on category. Now, there's much more information. This is just the front page. So here we see Jackson National is the asset manager, but they're using other asset managers to put these funds together. Mellon, T. Rowe Price, Goldman Sachs. You recognize a lot of these names. Now, if you want to go deeper and deeper, you just click this Get More Funds. And again, click Get More Funds. Jackson National has 150 some funds. Now let's go find out, well, okay, I want to be fossil free. And I'm going to click here once. I get all the Fs. I click here again. I get all the A's, just resorts. Now, okay, I want to find a fossil free fund. And I want to find a fund. These are all fossil free. That's why they're A. Look at these carbon footprints. They're all pretty low. Not well, even 33 is low because it's still green. Who's investing in green? Oh, look at this. We have this tech sector one, right? So you see the information that's here. Now, just a quick aside here that a financial advisor would tell you, if you were to go put all your money into a Jackson National Mellon fund that's in the tech sector, that is fossil free, and put 41% of its money into clean energy, that would be very foolish. Most financial advisors will tell you not to put more than 10 or 20% of your investments into the tech sector. And they might tell you to put nothing into real estate. WMC is a very good company, but beware about putting too much money into real estate. Fossil free, but it's real estate. Up here, fossil free, but it's tech. You want to find these more balanced funds out here, these established growth funds. So I'm just going to click on a button or two here. You see here on the clean energy, where some of these are quite high. Anything above 25 is unusually high. And you'll usually find that there is some sort of thing like tech. But here is a very popular fund. This is a Jackson National Mellon Fund, the 400 Social Index. It gets a B rating though. Now, oh, it's got a check on its sustainability mandate. That's good. Carbon footprint's not too bad. And 25% is in clean energy. Let's go take a look at this thing. Why is it getting a B fund? So we click on it. And we find out, okay, it's B. It's got some exposure, it's less than 2%. What's it doing? It's got one holding in coal. What is that holding? Click on it again. And you see that it's investing in this Air Products and Chemicals, Inc. So it's got some money going into something that's related to the coal industry, but not directly into the excavation of coal. I don't like that, but that's not horrible. Okay, so let's just let that go. Oh, it's got 13 holdings in oil and gas industry. Well, let's click on that. Where's that going? And you see, oh, it's got Phillips 66, and it's actually in the drilling of oil. Now, I don't like that much, but it's only $455,000. So there might be things about this fund that we like, and the things that we don't like are not that severe. So if you're looking at mixing a fund, this B fund might not be something that you want to run away from unless you want to be absolutely free from fossil fuels altogether. Now, can somebody name a fund that they might want to look at? A particular fund that you're invested in?
Apple?
Well, Apple's going to be a company, not a fund.
Okay, then I don't know.
But we'll get it. I'm going to show you. Say again.
Fidelity.
Yeah, Fidelity is going to be a fund manager.
Okay.
Yeah. So here we go. But you're going to get something on it. You're going to get a lot. So just like what I put in Jackson National, you're going to get all these Fidelity funds. Let's see how many bad funds they have. Ooh, they got a lot. Now, again, I can click on more funds. Again, I can click on more funds. I'm just going to see a whole lot of Fs. But they also, and this is a good point to make, they have a lot of As. And you see tech, healthcare, tech, real estate. So a lot of their A funds are not blended funds. They're real estate and tech. Let's see if we can find a high yield or anything. See a lot of health estate. This doesn't look too good. Defense and aeroport. See, I don't know. These would be part of a larger portfolio if you ever used them. Wow.
So that example there that you just showed, the defense and aerospace, we're only looking at fossil-free funds here. We can't also look at arms-free?
Yes. Let me go show you how we can do something a little bit more on this. Other issues, you see this button?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm going to show you this button, but also I want to remind you that up here on menu, we could go down here and look at weapon-free. There's more. A little more. Here we go. See all these funds down here that you can click on?
Okay. But you can't cross-reference them, like you can't create a filter that will select fossil-free, arms-free. You just have to look one by one.
Let me show you kind of here. Let's go back to where we were with Fidelity. And up here on the other issues. You see across here? This is your cross-reference.
That's useful, thank you.
See, so it was up here. Here's our fossil fuel results. Now, of course, this is very important. You want to see what your financial performance is. We haven't gotten there yet, but here's your other issues. So let's go over to this. They have a clean energy ETF. And here you can see it's B, it's got some fossil fuels. But where are they in here? The only thing they have are fossil fired utilities. Let me just click on this for a minute and find out what they're doing here. Drax Group PLC. We'd have to do our research on what they're doing. Sometimes you're getting a negative rating because the money's going into something that's fossil fuel utilities. But this actually might be a whole lot in transmission, which is something that we're eventually going to need for the transmission of electricity for clean energy. So again, I would not necessarily walk away from a fund that if this was the only thing that was negative on it. Right? That's where you want to dig down a little bit if you like that fund for some reason. But let's go back here to where we were. Top rated funds. Let's just click on that for a minute. These are funds that you'll notice they have the US SIF rating here on the sustainability mandate. This is what you're looking for in an ideal fund. So these are all fossil fuel grades that are A, free from fossil fuel. You can see they all have pretty good investments except for this one in clean energy. And they're getting a fairly low carbon footprint except for this one, which has global environmental markets. You'd have to find out why its carbon footprint is so bad. But these companies you often hear of, Parnassus, Pax, Trillium. Calvert is a little iffy, but they have a good reputation. Calvert has quite a few fossil fuel funds where these have none. Let's click on
what, I'm sorry, what is USSIF? What does that stand for?
here. Let's just roll over it here. You see it
Oh.
is the Forum for Sustainable and Responsible Investment. So the US is the United States Sustainable Investment Fund.
Okay. Thank you.
They are a group of investors, financial advisors, rather, a group of financial advisors that actually have classes on how to become environmentally and socially responsible investors. So you like to see that they have subscribed to their mandates. It's kind of like getting a B Corp rating, as I mentioned earlier. But again, when you see these names here, and I'm going to show you another place to look here, Parnassus, Trillium, Pax, even Calvert, and I should come clean, I have a Calvert fund. 1919, Green Century we're going to talk about. You see, Vert is another one, Aspiration Redwood. So let's just, before we get back into other questions, look over here on fossil-free investments. So I shouldn't have gone so quick. This is under number 4, right next to the As You Sow on Green America, this bottom tab, find fossil-free investments. So if you were out looking for where to go, you want to move your investments around, this is a very good website to go to. This is from Green America. And you'll see here they have financial planners and they have these mutual funds and the asset management firms. Right now, I want to click on mutual funds. And you're going to see this Appleseed. There's Green Century again. There's Parnassus, Trillium, Pax. I don't know why they don't have 1919 showing up here because that's another one to look at. But these are the mutual funds that exclude fossil fuel companies by policy. But they just don't do business with them. Now, back over here in the same area, we have what's called the Financial Planners and Investment Consultants. And this is a list of companies that GreenFaith has vetted. And some of these are based in California. I regret that it's not so easy as they don't say, Financial Inc., California. So you have to click on it and find out that they're actually based where. Now, quite often you have to scroll all the way down to the bottom and look at this. They're in these areas. Natural investments, they're all over. And there you go in and you look at their advisors. You can see here they're located in all sorts of different states. Now, some of these companies, let's just say natural investments, most of these advisors will only take portfolios that are at least 250,000 or 500,000 or greater. We can talk about that a little bit more. But I just want to point out this site. If you're looking around for a financial advisor that you can work with, this is a very good reference point. You could also call me, or you can call Fran Treplitz. I'll give you her contact information. Fran is the #2 person at Green America, and she's responsible for this list. I might just note that there's two here. This fellow here who happens to be in upstate New York, he works very closely with GreenFaith now. And also our friend Jeff Scales over here on JSA works very closely with GreenFaith. I get a lot of my information from those two fellows. So let's go back to questions and see where we're at.
I'm slightly overwhelmed.
I was just going to say the same. Actually, I don't really have a question, more a comment. I've just got a lot to do, right?
I think, though, several of us are already retired, and my retirement as a California educational elementary school teacher is pretty set. I don't think there's anything I can do to change anything there.
Well, I take it that you're getting your retirement out of your teacher's retirement system.
Yes, it's a
Right.
pension, basically.
And so there, that's a whole other aspect of engagement. I believe that the California teachers retirement system has divested.
Oh, okay.
Now, in New York State, which is one of the largest ones, I could say that the state retirement system is almost fully divested now. The New York City retirement system, which is separate, has 5 of their 7 funds divested now. The teachers retirement system is not divested. And it's a major campaign that we're involved in.
Okay.
But I
Well,
believe
that's
the
cool.
California teachers retirement system has divested.
Okay, thank you. I hope that's
But
true.
then what do we do, those of us that have these 401s or these other retirements? And that's where you can go into that as you sow tool and start seeing where your funds are. And Karen, you saw how we could really drill down rather deeply there. You can actually look at the very, very specific fund and see what it's doing. And you can find this on your reports, just like, you know, what fund do I have and how is it broken down all the way? All those little fine things that you see when you have 100, you know, you look at it and you see like, oh, I got 0.02% of my investments are in this fund. 1.4% of my investments are in that fund. And you see 60 funds there. You can go through and take a look at those. But then you get into the situation that you don't like what you see. So what are you going to do? Now, again, if you have more than $200,000 that you're looking to invest, go get a financial advisor and work with them. You just want to find one that's dealing with green investments. If you have less than that, then you probably want to be talking to some people about looking at a fund with Green Century, or you want to be talking to somebody over at Springbank to see what they might be able to do. Calvert also has 3 funds that you can invest in directly that are fossil-free funds. So they're out there with a little bit of research. And again, I can help direct you individually to who you might be talking to. Now, again, I'm just going to say up front, if you got more than 200,000, let's go find you a green advisor. If you have less than 200,000, there are some options for you out there that you should be looking at. And I highly recommend Green Century and Calvert.
What if we have an advisor, but I don't know how familiar she is with green investments? How could we help educate her?
Well, I've taken that on with 2 advisors locally. And it's a matter of they need to, first of all, have the desire to do so. And they can start working by getting in touch with USSIF and start a program with them. Again, sustainable investments have been around for a while. I misspoke when I said this. Socially responsible investments, SRI, have been around for a while. But be careful about SRI because fossil fuels weren't part of that in the past, right? We are looking more at prisons and guns and nukes and things like that. So the new term is really ESG, environmental, is the E. And you want to make certain that they're in that game. But then are they in it in such a way that's superficial? And again, they're going to want to know what your values are. And if you say that I want to be completely fossil free, I want to have absolutely none of this, then they're going to work towards that. If you say, listen, I don't care if I have a B fund, as long as what the B is coming from is not something that's really outrageous. They're not into tar sands. They're not into coal mines. They're not into this. The fact that they're investing in air compressors at a power plant, I really don't care about that. So, but they're going to want to know just how far you want to go. And then, of course, what's very important is you want to make certain these funds are performing well. Now, the good news is that the fossil-free funds are outperforming the fossil funds. Not last week, but over the past few years.
That's what that article was talking about. Well, part of that.
So as I kind of point out here, you can see how this plays together. When we start with the banks and the credit cards, and then we talk about the insurance, it's easy to identify where you don't want to be, but the solution is a problem because first of all, there aren't a lot of them and you can't get there directly. You have to go through this third party. And now we get to this very, very complex thing of your investments and your funds. And it's hard to see what you got. Thankfully for As You Sow. It's a rich tool to spend a lot of time with. And then you need to go find yourself a green investor. Now, if you live in California, Arizona, Colorado, there's quite a few of them. If you live in South Dakota, you're going to have a hard time. We're very fortunate here in upstate New York that we have 3 very good groups. The problem with them is none of them really want to take investors with less than $250,000. But there is, fortunately, I mentioned Berkshire Bank a little while ago. Berkshire Bank is willing to take anybody. They have a minimum fee. So you really don't want to be dealing with them unless you got $100,000 that you're going to invest. So what do you do with, I'm going to pick on my daughter. My daughter's just recently, she's 45. She's paid off her student loans. She's a professional. She's pretty much debt-free now, and she's ready to build her wealth. She has about $30,000 that she has in an IRA. And she's wondering what to do with it because she's in a Capital One investment. It's dirty. She wants to get out. And so her solution is simply to go over to a Green Century fund. And she can do this all by herself. She can move that money over to a Green Century fund. And that's probably what she'll do until she gets up to around $100,000. And then she'll move that into a managed fund. But again, if people have these type of questions, you can always give me an email or a phone call and I'll help you get into the right ballpark. I don't give financial advice. I just recommend people for you to go get help from. So that's the material. questions, feedback, all that.
This was
Well,
really, really helpful.
Yes, very.
Yeah.
Really interesting.
Mhm. It seems like we started off with the easier stuff, banks, then credit cards were a little bit more difficult, and then auto and home was more so, and then retirement is a mess. So you started us off with the easy stuff. Thank you.
Yeah, well, credit cards are pretty easy. I can say, take your Citi card or your Chase or your Wall Street card,
Yeah.
and throw it away, and go get yourself another card that has 2% or 1.5% cash back. I didn't talk about that much. I mean, you're all aware that these points are usually worth about 1%. Take the cash back and then just go buy your airplane ticket
Yeah.
or donate it.
Mm.
Yeah, so the banks and the credit cards are easy. Actually, even the insurance companies are easy, but you got to do a little legwork. The difficult thing are your investments.
Yeah.
And of course, when you look at the money that's involved, when we talk about your bank account, none of us are supposed to have a whole lot of money in the bank, right? Enough to make your ends meet. Your credit cards, I think a lot of us run almost all of our expenses through our credit cards now. We pay it off on a monthly basis. It's a convenience card more than anything else. And we get these cash back points. The insurance, well, I got to have insurance, right? But when it comes to, and so how much money is going through your credit card? Let's say $2,000 a month, that's $24,000 a year. And we're only talking about 3% of that is actually being used by the banks. So it's not really big bucks. The money that you have in your banking account, you shouldn't have a whole lot of money in your checking account or your savings account. Your insurance is what your insurance is, a couple, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, depending on where you live. The money is your investment monies. And what we say here of what we're doing here, all of us, all 12 of us that are here, 11 of us that are here, whatever, is I can stand out on the street corner and say, stop this, stop that. And I can write to my congressman, and I can write to my governor, and I can say all these things that I can say. But when it comes to my own investments, let's just look at it this way. $100,000. Now, most financial advisors would say that if you only have $100,000 in your savings, that you can't retire. But the reality of it is that over half of the population, the median, doesn't have that. It has around 80,000, I think, is the median point. So you think that the median, half of America has $85,000 or less in savings for retirement. And then, of course, there's people who have millions. But let's just show our head mass, say, I got $100,000 and there's 10 of us. If 10 of us move $100,000, now what if there's 100 of us that move $100,000? We've just moved $10 million out of fossil fuel into clean energy, because this is not just about divestment, it's reinvestment. And this is where we start to make a difference. Even on the credit cards, if I could say, like way early on in one of the workshops, I got a phone call weeks later from someone. And they were saying, I got to share this story with you. There's a phone call that I never had an emotion about using my credit card. It was just a nothing. It was like using a dollar bill. I had no emotion behind it at all. She said, the other day I used my green credit card and I felt good. And she starts laughing. She says, can you imagine? I had an emotion about using a credit card. She said, I actually felt like I was making a difference. And she said, and you know, I'm in the process now of moving my investments over to a green account. And she says, it does make a difference, doesn't it, Michael? And so that's where I think that all of us, we take this information that we have and just do what you can. Some of us do it overnight. Others, we start with our bank, we go to our credit card, we go to our insurance. Well, and on your insurance, don't necessarily wait until your policy is up, because in most states, I believe in California, if you change policies mid-year, you get full refund on your unused portion. So you can change your plans mid-year. So if there, I'm in no hurry to leave you if you want to keep talking, but I certainly questions and then feedback here on, was there material that we went too deep or areas that we didn't go deep enough?
I think for me, some of it was too deep because I have no background in any of this. Just thinking about having to research a lot of this is sort of intimidating. But I think it's great information, particularly the bank and the credit cards. That's really kind of an easy fix. It's the other two areas that look more daunting.
Well, Cindy, what I'd recommend is, again, it's daunting for everybody. It was
Yeah.
for me when I started. And so go back to that webpage and that first column on each case where it says, read all about it. It
Mhm.
helps you build your vocabulary
Yeah.
and gives you some good guidance. Because I think with most of it is just that. We have to have a vocabulary before we can start to understand something, right?
Yeah. It's a great tool. The thing that you're showing us all the information on, it looks like it's really helpful.
I didn't think you went too deep. I'm not that familiar with all the terms and everything, but I had enough knowledge of different insurance companies to recognize that, even the small ones have backup insurance, and it's a good idea to look at that. And investments, because Mike handles most of that, but that was daunting. But at the same time, I think if we can work with the advisor that we've had her for quite a while, and she's a good friend. My concern is that she'll go, oh, but you're in this fund and that's already, you don't have a choice. So I'm just, kind of anxious on how we'll work through that with her.
Yeah, I know with my life partner, Joanne, she had her investments. It was not a lot of money. It was over the amount that she should have a financial advisor, 130 or something like that she was talking to. And her advisor simply put her into a PAX fund. And in fact, they called me up and said, well, what do you think about PAX? And I go, thumbs up, go with PAX. So they just moved her dirty investments over to a PAX fund. It was real simple. In my case, we took two annuities that were a little complicated, and they actually allow us to make 20 moves between the funds per year without a fee. And so fortunately, my financial advisor is getting into the groove on this, and kind of like yours, wasn't there and is getting there. And so we're playing around with my money to to move it into greener areas. Because with annuities, you have to be careful what you move around.
Yeah, and we have at least one.
We have two.
Yeah.
And so it depends on who you got your annuity with. I had both my annuities have matured, but I wanted to leave them as annuities. So I moved them over to a place where I could move them around. And that was actually Jackson National. But I was with Bright House, which used to be MetLife. Not a place to be.
Well, thank
Any
you
other
for
questions?
being here. I really appreciate you giving us all this information.
Really interesting.
Mhm.
A new to-do
Again,
list.
You have my contact information if you have a quick question on an insurance company or a financial advisor, you want some references.
Yeah.
Yeah, a
And
lot of great resources.
And thank you, Mike and Jamie, for setting this up.
I just want to have one last little comment about the insurance companies. I just had a wonderful conversation, a 2-hour conversation with an insurance agent last 2 days ago. No, wait, it was Monday, it was yesterday. And we were joking about, have you ever seen one of these commercials on insurance that actually talk to you about insurance? The Enu's got his head stuck in the sand. The lizard is 15 minutes or less, cute as a button. And like the only one is like the farmer's guy that talks a little bit about how fast your claims are paid. but they don't talk about insurance. They're just all show. And it's just so amazing. And Progressive, again, I'll go back to my daughter. She had Progressive for her insurance company. And so we did our research, and they come out, they're in that dirtiest shirt in the hamper category. They're not hugely investing or insuring fossil fuel, but they are. But they're down towards the bottom. But then you do your research and you find out that they are the #1 largest advertiser, more than pharmaceuticals or anybody, of Fox News. So Flo, she's not telling you the whole story about her and Tucker Carlson.
Good to know. Good to know.
All right,
All right.
well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much. I was so glad that this was recorded because I'd like to have access to it again.
I think Rev Jeff's going to put it on YouTube.
Oh,
So.
good.
Cool.
And go reference the website.
Thank you, Michael.
Yes.
Most
great,
welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Be well.
everybody.